right. All right, we're back on the record in the matter of, okay, you on? Robert Ortiz versus Bureau of Motor Vehicles, 45 CO1 1211 MI 172. Mr. Vandermolen appears for Mr. Ortiz, and Mr. Mullins appears for Prosecutor Mr. Carter. You ready? All right, we can proceed now.
Judge,
you filed a motion to vacate my order.
Yes, and the reason we did that was at the request of the office of the B&B. They sent a letter to our office stating that under the statute, due to the suspension for the OWI, even though it
was for driving a boat,
right? Their office's wishes were that we file a motion and that the defendant wouldn't qualify under the statute. That's the reason for the motion.
Okay. Mr. Vandermolen?
If I may respond, that may be the Bureau of Motor Vehicles' wishes, but we need to follow the statute and follow the law. As I indicated in my objection, I'll just back up. If the Bureau of Motor Vehicles wishes that boats were to be defined as vehicles and that a violation of operating a boat would disqualify you for having a license reinstated, then the Bureau of Motor Vehicles has the legislature right around the corner to ask them to amend the statute. As I indicated in my objection, the state's motion is, as Mr. Mullen stated, and it's stated in their own motion, that it is because of the fact that it showed up on the record that he had a prior conviction, or he had a conviction during the time of the suspension of operating a boat. But Mr. Mullen's motion states, as the statute states, that you do not qualify if you violated it by operating a vehicle. And we litigated this issue in court at that hearing. And I cited the statute of the definition of a vehicle, and I recited all of that to the court in here. And if the legislator wanted to include the definition of a vehicle as including something that is transported over water, then they should have included it.
What is the definition of a vehicle?
A vehicle is, as I cited in here, Indiana Code 913-2196 provides a vehicle is, quote, a device in, upon, or by which a person or property is or may be transported or drawn upon a highway. Subparagraph F of the same statute provides, quote, for purposes of IC in a number of statutes, the term means a device for transportation by land or air, unquote. Then I cite the statute, well, what is a boat? A boat is defined as, quote, any device in which a person may be transported upon water, and includes every motorboat, sailboat, pontoon boat, rowboat, skiff, dinghy, or canoe, regardless of size. And furthermore, IC 913-219.85 defines watercraft as, quote, a contrivance used or designed for navigation on water, including a vessel, boat, motor vessel, steam vessel, sailboat vessel. So in other words, in sum, the legislature has set out requirements. You have a driver's license for a motor vehicle to be transported upon land upon the highways. Mr. Ortiz was suspended as HTV, and they said you may not now use your license to drive a motor vehicle upon these highways of this state, and do not violate this suspension by operating what? A vehicle. It did not say you may not then go, and you don't have to have a driver's license to operate a boat. The interest of the legislature is your HTV do not operate a vehicle upon the roadways during a 10-year suspension. The legislature has defined these two entities for different purposes, different registration requirements, different requirements in terms of being able to operate. You can have a 15-year-old under the law operate a boat out on Lake Michigan with an adult. You don't need a driver's license for that. The HTV statute has nothing to do with that. The other procedure... You don't need any license to drive a boat, do you? Of any kind?
I don't believe so, Judge. I think the issue that the B&B is having is that even though he was operating a boat, his license was suspended as a result of that. And to qualify for the probationary license, you're not to have any license suspensions within the 5-year period. from the time you're deemed HTV, the 5 years after
So his
that.
license was suspended again for operating the boat?
Yes, for 90 days. That's the reason that B&B has asked me to
That's not
intervene.
what's cited in the motion to vacate. What's cited in the motion to vacate, what was argued at the hearing, was that he did not qualify because he had this prior conviction. His own motion states that, is the fact
Can you
that...
be suspended for operating a boat?
See, I don't recall seeing that in his driving record, that he in fact had been suspended due to that.
Well, there's a copy of his record here.
Judge, yes, he was suspended. It's listed as suspension 29. It was effective June 26th of 2009 to September.
Operating per se motorboat.
But the problem is that the statute for disqualification for
I understand, but they're not going under that, they're going under a prior suspension.
Yes,
See?
yes, Your Honor.
It's the same thing I had in that case I just heard, I think.
the statute to allow him to get a probationary license does not have a disqualifying factor saying that you have a suspension. The disqualifying factor in the HDV statute is that you violated the terms by operating a vehicle. It doesn't say you violated the terms by getting a suspension of your license. He could have got a suspension of his license for a number of reasons that don't relate to operating a vehicle. There could have been a failure to provide proof of insurance. There could have been a number of reasons. The HDV, the statute for getting the probationary license disqualifies you if you violated the terms for operating a vehicle.
Isn't it any suspension?
It doesn't say that. The statute doesn't say that.
I thought it says that any prior suspensions.
That's for a hardship license. Coming in for a hardship license,
What are we coming in for here?
this was a probationary license after having served a 5-year HDV,
Okay, all right.
and he had a 10-year. You're allowed to serve 5 years. His license, of course, has been suspended. And now we're coming in after 5
So
years.
this isn't a hardship, this is a
It isn't.
probation.
Correct, Your
It's a
Honor.
probation.
Is it the same, is there a prior staff suspension?
My understanding of the statute is if it's within, if they're clean for 5 years after they're deemed to be habitual, then they qualify, but any suspension regardless.
Within that 5 years?
Yes, Your Honor.
The statute doesn't say it. It hasn't been cited to us. And the other procedural problem, what was the date you filed your...
You know what, I don't have my...
Judge, what's the filing date of their motion to vacate?
February 5th.
February 5th was the date of the order of the...
Wait.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to figure out the date of the filing of the motion to vacate. Because I didn't get a file's name on.
March 12th.
The other procedural problem that exists, though, is we litigated this issue. The court entered a final order on February 5. If the state had an objection to this, they had the duty under the trial rules to then file an appeal of that decision within 30 days, or file a motion to correct errors. We're past the 30 days. They're trying to come past that time period for an appeal, file a motion to vacate, because the AG or the B&B wants them to do that on a ground that is not cited in the statute. And if they wanted to do that by way of Trial Rule 60, which would be, a motion to set aside based on newly discovered evidence, they've cited no newly discovered evidence because we're back litigating the same issue we litigated in court when the court issued its order. So I think that procedurally, it's not...
Was this issue raised at the last hearing that he had a suspension?
It was.
Yes, Your Honor.
We litigated. And that was entered into evidence, taken into account by the court, and the court looked at the statute.
So it's your position that a probationary license doesn't matter if they had a suspension
That's right.
within that 5-year period?
Exactly. What matters is, did he violate, the statute says, did he violate the terms of it by operating a vehicle? That will disqualify him. So if he got caught with a...
So if he had a suspension for operating a motor vehicle, that disqualifies him.
If he had a suspension...
If he had a suspension within that 5-year period for operating a motor vehicle, then that disqualifies him.
Because he would have been caught operating a motor vehicle.
Right.
I would agree, because now we're back to the definition of...
And that is the statute's that narrow.
It's exactly what it says. He violates it for operating a vehicle. So it doesn't necessarily... It makes no difference to the legislature whether he had a suspension. What concerns them...
What was that statute again?
The statute is IC 9-30-10-9 sub C sub 5, which is what the state cited in its motion as the ground to say that he doesn't...
Is that statute here, Mr. Morris?
Yes, Judge. Hi, Porch Owner.
Was it right? 9-30-what?
I figured that out. The thing is, I think they should appeal.
Oh, that exactly.
So if they think that that's a problem, let the legislature, the Court of Appeals decide.
This is the first one I've had for somebody in the B&B. Usually it's like from the AG's office. Now just come up.
Oh, there was an AG here just before you were there.
Yeah. On a different case.
Was it a hardship?
It was a hardship.
Not. Okay, 5 says has had personal driving privileges suspended under this chapter for at least 3 years, consecutive years, and has not violated the terms of the person's suspension by operating a vehicle for at least 3 consecutive years. Doesn't matter, it says vehicle.
Right, it just says vehicle.
Okay, let me give that back to Mr. Owens. Well, all right, let me review these a little more carefully. When is his suspension up?
Well, you granted the order, and that reinstated it. Otherwise, I think he had on the 10-year, we came in on year 6, I believe. So the court granted it. He was able to go to the license branch, and he now has a license. And otherwise, if the court were to vacate it, he's back to now serving the balance of 4 years on his suspension.
Or 5 years from the date of 2009.
Yeah.
So as soon as he'd be eligible next year?
Right.
All right, let me look it over a little bit. I guess his behavior is even getting into motorboats kind of reckless.
And if the legislature wanted to exclude that and say, if you're operating a moped or you're operating a boat, then they should have included it, but I think it makes sense that they're connecting it with you or HT, we want you off the road. Your license is suspended. They said, don't violate it by operating a vehicle. And I cited the statute defining vehicles, talking about things that go on the road.
Okay.
That's simple.
All right, thank you.
I apologize again, Judge.
Quite all right.